Okay, so on 3.2, the first thing that you gotta review is how to do division, how to do long division. So that's kind of a big deal, and what you're going to do in calculus here and there. There's lots of times I could think where you do some long division algebraically. Okay, so this is what the remainder theorem says. So this is just saying if you divide two polynomials, that's what f of x over gx is saying. You divide two polynomials. Well, when you divide, you always get a quotient, and the quotient is a function. You do that, and then you do the remainder. That r of x is the remainder, which is kind of important in what we're going to learn here, and then it goes like that. I'm going to do the division problem, 25 divided by 3. I don't know how old people are when they learn how to divide anymore. Maybe it's 4th grade. I have a nephew in 4th grade or something. I think he's learning how to divide by now. I don't know if I'm right or not. Now, not everybody divides the same way. If you came from another part of the world, you may have never learned this algorithm, okay? I see that all the time, so it's helpful to learn this algorithm. So if you're like an international student, there's a chance that you have never learned this algorithm. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can still do your algorithm if you're confident in how it goes. So what you do is in this side of the world is you do this. You just do 25 divided by 3, and you get as close as you can. That's 8. Okay, that's step 1, is you do the division step. Then you do the multiplication step. You do 8 times 3. That's 24. Okay, then you do the subtraction step like that. That gives you a 1 like that. Okay, and then you're done. Okay, so we have an answer to that problem. So if there was another number, you could bring that down. Okay, so that's your division algorithm. You could also do it this way if you wanted to. I kind of skipped some, it doesn't matter. So that would be a 0. And then you could bring down the 5. Hold on. Do I not know how to divide? Apparently not. Let me try again. I think I got it right the first time. Okay. 25 divided by 3. So that, I think what you learn is nothing goes there. That goes in there to give 8. 8 times 3 is 24. 1 is your remainder. I did do it right the first time. Okay, I don't know what I was thinking there. Okay, so anyway, this is your quotient, and this is your remainder. Okay, so the division algorithm really says this. When you do 25 divided by 3, you end up getting the quotient plus the remainder over the divisor. Okay, one thing that you learn in grade school is that's 8 1/3. Okay, you learn to put the remainder, remainder over the divisor, then you got it. But that's what this division algorithm is saying. That's your quotient, that's your remainder. Okay, I usually like to review an arithmetic problem before I do an algebra problem, and sometimes students have to play with the algebraic division a little bit because they haven't done it in a long time, or maybe you've never done it. Okay, so I'm going to go through and just do one example of long division, and then we're going to kind of transition out of that and do synthetic division, which is a lot easier. Okay, so watch this carefully because this may be something that some of you are going to have to work on. First of all, we're going to set this up. We just draw a division bar and we do 20x to the third minus 7x to the second minus 2x plus 11, and we're going to divide that by negative 4x plus 3. Okay, now you want to do all this in your head. Okay, and usually when I teach this, because I think a lot of students need that, is I kind of write down the steps that I'm doing in my head anyway. So when you do this division step, all you look at is those two numbers. Okay, and you can do that in your head. I'm going to write down kind of what I'm doing. I'm doing 20x to the third divided by negative 4x. Okay, and then that's something you can process in your head. 20 divided by negative 4 is negative 5. X to the third over x to the first is x to the second. Okay, because you subtract the exponents, 3 minus 1 gives 2. Now, so you can do that in your head, but some students who are just learning this for the first time do a lot better if they just write down everything they do. Okay, so you record that up there. So that's the result, and that takes you through the division step. Okay, the second thing you go to is you go to the multiplication step. When you multiply, you're going to multiply the negative 5x squared times the whole divisor negative 4x plus 3. Now see, that's a distributive property. So you're going to do that. So if you do that, you would have positive 20 x to the third, and then you would have minus 15 x to the second like that. Okay? Now again, you're going to learn to just do this in your head. You don't have to write the steps out unless you need to. So I'm going to record what I have. I have a 20 x to the third minus 15 x to the second. Okay, like that. I'm doing the same thing I did on that 25 divided by 3. Okay? All right? So now that takes care of that step. Now you do the subtraction step. And you can do the subtraction in your head. So what you're doing is 20 minus 20, that cancels. You don't have to write 0x to the third. But by the way, that always will. If that column isn't canceling, then you've already messed up on the problem. That will always cancel if you did the previous step right. Okay? Now this one goes like this. Now be careful right here. You're really doing negative 7x squared subtract negative 15x squared. Okay, so sometimes I'll tell students on this to just change the sign and add, like that. So what this really is you're really doing negative 7 plus 15, so that would give 8x to the second. So what goes there is a positive 8x to the second. That's our subtraction step. The most likely place students mess up is on step 3. That's what I see more often than anything else. Okay? All right. Now, last step is your next number, the negative 2x. You bring that down like that, and then you just start all over again. Okay, now I'm going to erase this 0x to the third. I was really just emphasizing on that. So what you do now is you just start over again. Okay, all right, so next loop you do this then. So what I'm going to do next is I'm only going to divide this and this. Okay, you want to learn to do that in your head. So when we do that, you're doing 8x squared over negative 4x, which is negative 2x. So you record the negative 2x there. Okay? Then you do the distributive property. So now you do the negative 2x times negative 4x plus 3. Okay, do that in your head. So negative 2x times negative 4x is positive 8x squared. Okay, negative 2x times 3 is negative 6x. See how the 8x squareds are the same? They always will be. If they're not, you're messing up. Okay? Now we subtract. So when you subtract, you can do this in your head. 8 minus 8 is gone. This one is really negative 2 minus negative 6 when you do that. You're subtracting a negative, so it's negative 2 plus 6. So that would be 4x. Be very careful when you do that. Okay? Then you bring down the next number. Like that. That takes you through 2 loops of the problem by doing that. Okay? The next thing I'm going to do in my head. Okay, if you can't do this, then just write steps out. So the last loop I'm going to do totally in my head. I'm going to divide those 2 numbers. I'll at least write that out. That's 4x over negative 4x, which is negative 1. Okay? Now we got that. Now we're going to multiply. So you're going to do negative 1 times negative 4x is positive 4x. Negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Then you subtract. Okay, when you subtract, that cancels. This is really 11 minus negative 3, so it's 11 plus 3, so it's 14. Okay? Now sometimes if a student hasn't done that, and I teach this, I can tell they don't get what I'm doing. You have to practice this, but you got to do those individual steps like that until you get confident that you can run through that in your head. Okay? So what we're going to do now is just kind of write down these things. The quotient is this part right here. So the quotient is negative 5x to the second minus 2x minus 1. The remainder is the 14, like that. Okay, so that would be how you would do that by long division. Now, you're not going to do this too often in this class, but you're going to do synthetic division all the time. That's the reason I'm only just going to do one example of this. You'll do a few of these problems in your homework because there are times in calculus when you have to do it this way. That synthetic division doesn't work in every single situation you're going to learn. Okay, so that's the idea. Do you guys at least get the rough idea? Sometimes students just don't get this until they start crunching it out themselves and playing with it. But you can learn it. I mean, it's the same algorithm you learned in elementary school. It's just it looks different to students, and it isn't. Trust me, it's not any different. Okay, just got to know how to deal with the x's and stuff. Okay, synthetic division you'll appreciate because it's a lot easier. You can do synthetic division like super fast. So somebody figured out that it turns out when you do a long division problem of certain types, then really it's all arithmetic. All through there, all I did was arithmetic, if you think about it. That's really all I did. I did it in a certain order following the division algorithm. So what we're going to learn is synthetic division next. This is just for you to refer to. This is the steps that you'll do in doing synthetic division. Okay? And the thing about synthetic division is it only works if you're dividing by x minus something or dividing by x plus a number. Okay, that number can be a fraction, but it has to be that way. So if you divided by x squared minus 2, synthetic division doesn't work. So it's limited. It works for x minus or x plus a number. Okay, but when you can use it, it's very easy to do. Now I'll go through these steps on the next page when we put this together then. So let's go ahead and go to the next page and I'll show you what we're going to do here. Okay, this is an example of a problem you would want to do by synthetic division. And the reason is because you're dividing by x plus a number. Okay, so here's what you do. And just watch this carefully. If I need to repeat it a couple of times, I will. So when you do synthetic division, all you do is you just look at these coefficients, 1, 7, 12, 12, 13, 16. And everything has to have a placeholder. So you have an x to the 5th, so you put a 1. You have to have something for x to the 4th. You have to have something for x to the 3rd and so forth. If there's any missing term, you're going to put a 0 there. Okay, so you just write down 1, 7, 12, 12, 13, 16. Okay? And then what happens is this, and this is what you got to be careful about. Think about a 0. If you set that equal to 0 and solved, you would get x equals negative 5. So the number you put there is negative 5. Not 5, you put negative 5. So you put the opposite of that number. That's another thing you got to consider. So the first thing is getting everything set up for synthetic division. Okay, so watch carefully. All right, it's actually very easy to do. So here's how you start. You always start by bringing down the first number, whatever it is. Okay, then we're going to do the same thing over and over again in our head. Now you do negative 5 times 1. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5, so put the result there. Okay, then you add the column. So 7 added to negative 5 is 2. Then you repeat the same process over and over and over again. Now you do negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Always add the column. 12 added to negative 10 is 2. Then again, negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Add the column, that's 2 again. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Add the column, that's 3. Negative 5 times 3 is negative 15. Add the column, that's 1. So see what I'm doing on that's the same thing over and over again. Everybody will get this because it's easy to do. It's just always bring down, multiply, add. Multiply, add. All the way through. Does everybody follow that okay? Okay. All right. Now, it turns out that the quotient is staring us right in the face. So it goes like this. This last number right there will be your remainder. Okay, so you have a remainder of 1. And then it goes like this. The powers go down. So if the 5th power was the highest, then what you end up getting is this is really x to the 4th. That's really x to the 4th, x to the 3rd, x to the 2nd, x to the 1st. That's a constant. Okay, so the power just goes down 1 every time you do synthetic division. So the quotient is these numbers right here. It would be 1x to the 4th plus 2x to the 3rd, and then plus 2x to the 2nd, plus 2x. The 3 is a constant. That is your quotient right there. The 1 is a remainder like that. Okay? And then when you write the result like this. Okay? So you have to write it as x to the 4th plus 2x to the 3rd plus 2x squared plus 2x plus 3. And then your remainder is 1, so you have to say plus 1 over x plus 5. Okay, that is your remainder that goes there the x plus 5 is what you divided by. We call that the divisor. So you want to know what the quotient is. That's important, what the remainder is, and how to write the result of that division problem. Isn't that easier? Yeah, it's way easier than long division. But again, long division you have to do sometimes. So you have to learn how to do both ways, but you want to do it this way when you can. Okay, is everybody with me okay there? Okay, all right. So let's do one more here, and then we'll have a little bit of time to apply this a little bit today, but this will do about half of this section today and the rest next week. Okay, this one we're going to do the same way. This time you have missing terms. Yes?
Yeah, okay, so if we were to go back to when you divided 25 by 3, the remainder was 1 over 3, right?
Right.
It was 8 times 1 over 3.
Did I write that right? It should have been 8 plus, no, that's right. The quotient was 8. Remainder was 1, so I do 1/3. I did the same thing I did. So
right, but the answer, on the little arrow thing, you said 8 1/3.
Yeah, now that's the same thing as 8 plus 1/3. Like when you're in like 4th or 5th grade, when you do this, your teacher teaches you how to just do 1/3, but technically it's plus 1/3.
Okay.
Okay, in algebra you have to put the plus there. Okay, that's the idea. That's a good point though, because that's, we're doing the same thing that you do in arithmetic essentially. Okay, so this one sets up like this. Now you got to be careful on this one. You got to have a placeholder for everything. So we have an x to the 4th, that's a 3. You don't have an x to the 3rd, so you got to put a 0 there. You have to. We have an x to the 2nd, that coefficient's 4. You don't have an x to the 1st, so that's 0. And then you have your constant term like that. So what you have to learn how to do is zeros are where anything's missing. So you always have to have something accounted for everywhere here. Okay, now what you have here, just try to think of it this way. Think of this like a factor, because it is a factor. If you solve that equation, you get x equals -1/2. So what you'll put there is -1/2. So that's the setup. And when you have fractions, you just got to deal with it. Okay, I wanted to do one that's got fractions in it because you'll have that situation. And try to do this without your calculator and changing things to decimals. Just deal with the fractions there. Do work on your scratch paper if you have to. So the first step is you'd bring the 3 down. Then we'd multiply. I'm going to kind of do all this at the side. You don't have to write this down, but just kind of as fraction reminder, that would be -3 over 2. And just leave it that way. Don't change it to -1.5, okay? Now we're going to multiply, okay, or I'm sorry, we're going to add the column, so that's -3/2. Okay, now we multiply, so I've got -1/2 times -3 over 2. If you multiply that straight across, you get 3/4. Fractions get multiplied straight across. Okay, so that's 3/4. Okay, now we got to add the column, so we're going to do 4 plus 3/4. There's a couple of ways you could do that. I'm going to get a common denominator, so I'm going to put that over 1. Common denominator is 4, so I multiply that by 4 over 4. So that would end up giving 16 over 4 plus 3/4. So that's equal to 19 over 4. Okay, so that's what goes there. Okay, just deal with it. Do it with scratch paper if you can't do all this arithmetic in your head, because it's hard to do this arithmetic in your head. Okay, now we multiply. So now we're going to take -1/2 multiplied by 19 over 4. Again, you multiply straight across. So that's -19 over 8. Record the -19 over 8 there, and then we're almost done. Okay, add the column. You add that. Do that in your head. That's -19 over 8. Okay, next step would be to multiply. So now we do -1/2 times -19 over 8. So that is 19 over 16. So that's what goes there. All right. And then just deal with the arithmetic. So the last thing we're going to do is -1 plus 19 over 16. Put that over 1, get a common denominator. Okay, so that's going to give -16 over 16 plus 19 over 16. So that looks like the remainder is going to be 3 over 16. Okay, you'll have to deal with that sometimes. Don't use decimals. And the reason you don't use decimals is because they're going to repeat. You'd have to round. We don't want to round. We want to get everything exact. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, so here's what you have. Your remainder is 3 over 16. The remainder is important, and so is the quotient. The quotient goes here. Okay, and remember the power goes down 1. So our highest power was 4. That's going to be x to the third, x to the second, x to the first, and then that's going to be a constant term like that. Okay, so the quotient we will get for our answer on the quotient would be 3x to the third minus 3 over 2x squared plus 19 over 4x minus 19 over 3. Okay, like that. That's it. That's it. That's how you put that together. I wanted to do one example with a fraction in it because it's worth going over just kind of a review of all that arithmetic. Yes?
Your constant is over 8, not 3.
I saw a couple of weird looks out there. I usually see that. Okay, that 19 over 8, okay? All right, now we're good, I hope. All right? Okay, what do you think? Yeah, you can do it. It's arithmetic. Okay, you got to know how to do arithmetic. All right, so I think we'll stop here and just kind of do, this is a good stopping point. So what I've done today is at least got you through how to do long division and synthetic division. And I would practice that. The homework's up on my math lab. I think 3.2, I can't remember how I have that set up, what the due date. It's on there, but we'll kind of, it's either going to be next Wednesday or probably the following Monday is the way I'll do that, so you have a week to do it. But it's not a bad idea just over the weekend to at least kind of get your synthetic division and long division practice so you're confident with it, because we're going to be using that in the next sections extensively, so you're going to get that down as soon as possible.